I wanted to make a tier list even though the patch just dropped because I wanted to help the mobile players coming into the game make an informed decision on what characters that they should play. With that said, this is a solo queue tier list, so this isn't really for coordinated play, so keep that in mind, and this also does not count for the new items. I don't believe the new items are strong enough to swing characters super high up that are weak or super high down even though they're strong currently, so I'm not too worried about that. I will also be talking about which movesets I think you should be running on them, or I'll be telling you if multiple movesets are viable, and hopefully that'll help you guys who are just coming to the game as well. Alright, anyway, let's get started. So first up is Venusaur. So I think Venusaur is pretty strong. I don't really think the petal dance changes change too much. What I do think is possible though is you might take Giga Drain over Sludge Bomb now. Sludge Bomb itself was always kind of mediocre, but Giga Drain, I mean, I guess that one's also mediocre, but at least it helps against Dive, which is your main weakness on Venusaur. So for Venusaur, you're going to be going Solar Beam plus Sludge or Giga Drain. His main strengths come from he has a very strong early game, and he has the ability to steal objectives extremely easily with Solar Beam. Next up on the list is Gengar. Gengar, even though I love this guy, he is absolutely terrible. Just please don't play him. Anything in this tier right here, don't play. Anything in these tiers or above are at least playable. Just you're making your team cry if you play characters in the Gardevoir tier. Spoiler alerts for later. I think Mr. Mime is strong. I think he should go the line skill shot, and honestly either card swap or barrier are strong here. His ult is very strong. He has a decent laning phase starting from level 4. He's one of the best bullies in the game. He can bully out most, if not all, characters in the game. He's just a very solid character. He does a lot of damage. He has some utility, but the main thing we're looking for here is just he does nutty damage and he's annoying to deal with, especially in objectives with his ult. The next up is Snorlax. So Snorlax is also very strong. He is one of the strongest solo queue defenders. For Snorlax, we're going to be going Heavy Slam plus Block. His main strengths come from the fact that he has one of the strongest early games, if not the strongest early game in the game. It is impossible to move this guy from lane because of Rest being so strong. He has great last hit secure with Tackle, and his Heavy Slam is a lot of CC in a large AoE. Alright, next up, I already spoiled this one for you guys. I also love playing Gardevoir. She's one of my favorite characters. Just please do everyone a favor and don't. So Absol is one of the characters I'm not 100% certain about putting on this tier list. He might be above average. He might only be mediocre. I'm not sure. The Sucker Punch buffs seem to have helped him a decent amount. So even though Absol has a mediocre ult, I still think he's pretty good. It looks like for the most part we're going to be going Pursuit plus Sucker Punch, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So you guys will have to wait and let me do a little bit of testing before I give you a definitive answer. The strengths of Absol are he has a really strong early game. One of the best in the game. He has great assassination potential, great dueling potential. His biggest weakness is that he pretty much has no ult. His ult is among the worst in the game. So this means that he doesn't scale too well because he also has a really low base HP pool. Alright, well, Garchomp, he got buffed. The 5% effective HP or whatever that he got doesn't really change too much. So Garchomp's ending up in Gardevoir here. Next up is Lucario. This guy is absolutely insane. They thought a 70 damage nerf to Power Punch was going to stop this guy. Well, Extreme Speed is just as good. Power Punch is still also very good. Honestly, you can go with either. I still think Bone Rush is going to be better than Close Combat, but Close Combat after the bug fixes actually hurts like hell. So if you did not know, Close Combat Plus before in the past would actually lower the damage to Close Combat. So it was effectively doing half the damage it was supposed to before. So now Lucario has an actual ability that he can take. So honestly, you can take any of the 4 abilities and you'll do fine. Personally, I think Extreme Speed plus Bone Rush is probably going to be the way to go at the moment. Also, side note, Razor Claw plus Extreme Speed seems insanely strong. Lucario has the best bully potential in the game. Lucario can actually 1v2 lanes. He is strong throughout the whole game. His ult is super underrated. He is really good secure on objectives. This guy just does it all. He takes all arounder and really pushes that definition. Next up is the Bug Abuser himself. I think Crustle is decent in solo queue. I think this is more of like a coordinated strategy though. I think solo queuers will run it down when you're trying to split push the whole game. If you're playing Crustle, you want to go Shell Smash plus Stealth Rocks, and you're playing him like a split pushing menace, and your goal is just to back cap You can do this by using your ults if they are contesting the goals, or just scoring constantly by farming really fast with Stealth Rocks plus Fluffy Tail. Next up on our list is Greninja. I actually think this patch might be a buff to Greninja, and I'll tell you why. The ultimate move, or rather Unite move, becoming faster is actually a huge deal. This makes it so people can't just walk out of your Unite move anymore, so you can just straight up kill them at the Dreadnought fights or Zapdos fights or wherever you end up fighting with it. The recharge doesn't seem to matter too much. I don't believe they shaved off too much from that, so we'll ignore that change. But then they actually bug fixed Double Team to where the clones now actually use skills and do damage. So Double Team actually seems like a viable option over Smokescreen now. The attack he lost was about 20 at level 15, which isn't too much, and he lost about 250 health. He got hit decently, but I think the Double Team bug fixes plus the Unite move buff might make up for this. I still think Greninja is one of, if not the best junglers for solo queue. I think surf resets are going to be absolutely insane down at Dreadnought. This guy is a menace. Speaking of menaces, honestly, every single Talonflame I've seen recently has absolutely destroyed me. This guy has... I don't know if Talonflame was always this strong. I don't know if this guy just shot up in priority once he got an attack buff. I don't know what is going on. This guy hurts like hell. Him and Absol I'm not too certain about, but this guy is... I want to conservatively put him here, but the way he's feeling, he might even move up to strong, at least as far as solo queue is concerned. Talonflame hurts. This guy is insane. Honestly, I don't know what moveset Talonflame runs. I think you go Aerial Ace plus Brave Bird, but I'm not 100% sure. Alright, next up is Charizard. I think Charizard has always been strong for solo queue. I think he is super slept on. I play him a lot myself. This guy is a menace. They just buff Flamethrower to be super useful. The move speed buff on Flamethrower is insane. You get 4 seconds of it. It might be better than Fire Punch now. But honestly, both sets seem viable. They buffed the cooldown on Fire Blast by a lot. They buffed the cooldown on Flamethrower by a decent amount, but the increase in move speed duration on Flamethrower is really strong. I think both sets are good. Fire Punch plus Flare Blitz or Flamethrower plus Fire Blast. You can't go wrong with either. I think they're both S tier. Next up is Zeraora. So they ended up buffing Wild Charge in Zeraora, but I think Wild Charge kind of sucks. Spark, however, the bug fixes are extremely noticeable. I still think Volt Switch plus Discharge is the way to go, as it helps you get into fights to assassinate people and get out without dying, which is very important, especially if you're ahead. But it also makes you that much stronger at Dreadnought fights. You lose some of the chase ability that you have when you go Spark, but I think it's a worthwhile trade. I value the safety more than I value being able to run down people who are like 5 levels lower because you're abusing this broken assassin AoE cannon looking dude. The slash changes didn't seem really to change that much, so none of the other changes really matter too much. I think Zeraora is still one of the strongest characters in the game. I think in the West, we super sleep on Zeraora, but over in the Eastern regions like Japan or Korea, they seem to value this guy very highly. Next up is Cinderace. I think Cinderace has always been strong for solo queue. I also think Cinderace is super slept on. His ability to cheese objectives is insanely strong, especially with the buffs that just came out. Powerball lost 2 seconds on its cooldown and got a 30% damage increase. That is insane. On top of this, Flame Charge got a 1 second decrease as well. Cinderace is looking very strong right now. I think he is super strong in solo queue. I pick him pretty often. He feels super easy to steamroll games with. I can just take over, dominate games 1v9 style. This guy is a menace. I think because of the existence of characters like Blastoise, specifically, you might have to go Pyro Ball. I think Flame Charge is always the way to go, but Pyro Ball or Blazing Kick is situational depending on the lobby. Next up is Eldegoss. Eldegoss is one of the best supports in the game. She has strong early game harass. She has good scaling. She has good objective secure with Leaf Tornado and her ult. Eldegoss is just a very strong character. She can duel very well as a support, which is really weird. She actually beats Cinderace and Greninja in 1v1 if you get Leaf Tornado upgraded, which is honestly kind of stupid. Anyway, Eldegoss is strong. I think she is probably the best support as far as solo queue is concerned. For movesets, I think you go Leaf Tornado plus whatever the shield move is on your second one. I forgot what it's called. I think it's Cotton Guard. I'm not 100% sure. Whatever that is, you go that. Next up is Cramorant. So I thought Cramorant was always pretty weak for solo queue, and honestly even coordinated play, I thought he was overrated. And he just got nerfed again. His ult took a decent hit, lost about 150-ish damage on it. His surf took a decent hit, also lost about 150 damage on it. So he's fallen off of priority, in my opinion. I think he's just mediocre. For movesets, you can go Air Slash if you're against heavy dive comps, or you can go Hurricane. but Surf still seems to be the way to go because I think Dive is just too risky. I don't see how a Cramorant can use Dive without just dying. Alright, next up is Blastoise. They tried to kill this guy. They can't do it. Blastoise is a menace. Blastoise destroys. Blastoise's ult is one of the best ults in the game. Rapid Spin is still a really good move. You can even go Surf and this guy is really strong. Blastoise just is a monster. You know, for a defender, this guy keeps getting memed on for doing stupid amounts of damage. I posted screenshots of me doing like 170k damage with him. This guy is insane. Honestly, both sets on him are really good to go. You can go Surf Hydro, you can go Rapid Spin Hydro, you can go Rapid Spin Water Spout. I'll be doing some testing on my stream, so you guys can go ahead and check that out to see which build I end up defaulting to. But I think all of them are good. I still think Blastoise is super good. I still think Blastoise is S tier. Probably even in competitive as well. Next up is Pikachu. So Pikachu is decent, especially if you're just starting to learn the game. He has a really simple kit. It'll teach you the fundamentals because you learn to harass early and how to push your lead. Otherwise, you will lose the game. I think he is somewhat slept on. I know a lot of the teams that run 1-1-3 currently are running Pikachu, especially in the bot lane, but obviously that's not solo queue, so we won't dive too much into that. I think he's very good for new players. I think he's not a bad character at all. I think he is somewhat underrated. As far as movesets are concerned, I think Electro Ball plus Thunderbolt is the way to go. Next up on our list is Alolan Ninetales. I think Alolan Ninetales is very, very strong. The amount of CC this character has, despite having a lot of AoE damage, is insane. You can get stunned, 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 stunned over and over again. I haven't seen how big the damage fix on her ult is, so maybe that helps her even more. Maybe it even makes her super strong, but I'll have to play it out and test it myself. For Ninetales, we're going to be going Aurora Veil plus Dazzling Gleam. Next up is Wiggly. So honestly, I'm stuck between which tier I should put her in. So I'm just going to put her at the top of mediocre for now. I think Wiggly is still pretty decent. I think people are still sleeping on how much utility she has with her ult, and the sleep changes haven't seemed to affect her too much. But that being said, I think Rollout is still really strong. I don't think Rollout was given the appreciation that it should have had. Rollout was a very strong moveset beforehand. I know a lot of Japanese teams ended up running Rollout, and towards the end, some Western teams ended up picking it up too, but not to the extent I think it deserved. I think Rollout was really strong, and I even personally ended up sleeping on it. For moves, I think you go Double Slap and either Rollout or Sing. Next up on our list is Machamp. I think Machamp is pretty decent in solo queue. I think Submission is really strong. I think his ult is pretty strong. I just think like Cross Chop and Close Combat are both kind of mediocre moves, and he also has to wait a long time to actually become useful. I've never been a fan of the Dynamic Punch version of him, and if you're playing him in jungle, well then you're taking a slot that could be taken by Zeraora or Greninja or Charizard or Cinderace or Blastoise. So I don't know if I really like to see that. I think he doesn't really justify a slot being taken, but he's still a decent character. He's not terrible. If you like him, you can go ahead and play him. Put him in mediocre for now. For movesets, I believe Submission and Close Combat is the way to go. I know a lot of people go Cross Chop, but I've been a fan of Close Combat on that set. Next up is Slowbro. I think Slowbro is pretty weak, especially in solo queue. I like to meme around with this guy because it's funny to go Scald and then just do absolutely nothing the whole game and then still win somehow because your team carries you. I don't know. This guy sucks, especially in solo queue. In coordinated play, he has some merits in focusing down people by like flash ulting, but solo queue is nowhere near as coordinated. So I put Slowbro in weak tier. For movesets, if you want to play him, you'll be going Surf and either Telekinesis or Amnesia. Next up is Blissey. In competitive, I think Blissey is really strong, but in solo queue, I think Blissey does not have the agency that Eldegoss has to really make her a above average character. Her early game is mediocre, and while you can survive it, in the later stages of the game, you're very, very, very reliant on your teammates. A character like Eldegoss can end up stealing things, she can end up soloing people, but a character like Blissey has to just sit back and like play protector basically, and pray that your teammates are good. A character like that is pretty much never good for carrying, so I'm going to put her in mediocre. For movesets, you go Helping Hands, and honestly, Soft Boiled or Safeguard are both good options, so you can't really go wrong with either of those. So to wrap up my tier list, once again, this is for solo queue, and for competitive, things are going to move around a little bit. These are just my thoughts after the patch. I'm not 100% sure this is where I'd put everything, so I'll be updating at least for a week what my thoughts on the tier list are down in the comments, so just read the pinned comment there. If you want a better idea of what I'm thinking the tier list is looking like now, these are just initial impressions once again. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys, and I gave you some insight as to why I think characters are strong or weak, as well as what builds to play on them. And yeah, I guess that's it. Take care.